Welcome to game day. The Montreal Canadiens and Toronto Maple Leafs square off, the first of many meetings between the two clubs. Of course, the two open up the season October the 8th, where the Habs open up on the road before they come back to host Seattle and the Shane Wright get right game, revenge for not drafting him. But all kidding aside, one of the questions, brother, we often get asked here, right, as the Montreal Canadiens are building up their roster is not so much the defensive pairings or so much talent on the special teams, which is definitely a topic that Marco and I have shared maybe some concerns on. But no, it's who's going to play alongside Alex Newhook? Who's going to round out the Canadiens' depth, right? Like you saw Christian Dvorak. He was out for blood on Tuesday, nicking Juraj Slafkovsky in the face. To me, it's something, that was a concern of mine, bro. Losing Yoel Armia. I love referencing these guys as dirty minute-eating players. Is there anyone yet that is, after two preseason games, has shown that they're ready for that role?
Or that they could be ready for that role, I think.
Yeah, fair,
because there's still more leeway to go, I find, and you still have to put some guys in different situations to truly evaluate, right? The Canadiens tried that by putting Joshua Roy there. I don't think I think that was a mission inaccompli in his case. Needed to show more, unfortunately. Just couldn't find the jam needed to be in that kind of a position. However, I think Owen Beck in his first game was really strong for the Canadiens. I think he was able to do everything, winning draws, playing on the penalty kill. They used him on a shift in 3-on-3, scored the tying goal. In fact, he scored the only real goal of the game. Really good chemistry with, mostly anybody he plays with. But he thinks the game like an NHLer. And I think that, especially when you got a guy like Newhook, who is all wheels, you really want a guy that can keep up. And I feel like he's probably the only one with a legitimate chance that can keep up. And at the same time, he's a righty. So for those that are asking why that's relevant, Zachary Bolduc, Alex Newhook, both lefties. If you're taking a face-off on the right side, this is a guy that you can easily slot in and he's going to win that draw 60% of the time on his strong side, if not more. So there are elements and layers to the evaluation. But we've talked about this before. Florian Xhekaj is also knocking on that door, right? And the key with Florian Xhekaj is he brings a physical element that could be used at center or at wing, despite, if he were to make that line, there would be three lefties, which I'm not convinced the Canadiens would do. But let's just talk, just fit here. Could you imagine a line with Zachary Bolduc and Florian Xhekaj just running a rough shot and just having, that he plays center, that he plays wing, I think is irrelevant in this situation. But just, could you imagine the force along the boards with those two guys and then having a guy like Newhook, who I know a lot of people aren't necessarily high on because he's missed a lot of the golden opportunities that have been put in front of him in terms of shots over the last couple of years. But I feel like having him be there as the trigger guy, as the other two do the dirty work, I feel could be very interesting.
I don't know if I'm too old school. Maybe it'll come across as such, but that's what I want my third line to be like, and I don't think it's the wrong perspective because Jeff Gorton, Martin St. Louis, how they're choosing to use players in certain roles. Like, as an example, Oliver Kapanen played in a primetime role on Monday against Pittsburgh at the Bell Center, right? Look who his line mates were. So to me, I'll read into maybe they envision him to be someone that brings more skill than ruggedness to the table. Owen Beck maybe can bring both. But when I'm talking about when the top two lines come off and you're looking for sustained pressure, especially on a forecheck, I'll take Florian Xhekaj over Owen Beck and Oliver Kapanen twice on Sunday and every day in between. And that's kind of what I want my third line to look like. And in that game against the Flyers, Marco, we saw Florian be used by MSL in short-handed situations. So for me, we're like looking at that and saying, maybe there's a head start and maybe they're going to give Florian an early look. Maybe he breaks camp with the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, it's too premature to get there after two games, but maybe they're giving us some clues.
Well, I mean, you could say the same thing for Owen Beck. Owen Beck was used on the penalty kill, used on the power play, used 5-on-5. I mean, they're using him in every situation, and they even started him in camp on that third line with Oliver, Bolduc and Newhook, right? So clearly there's an idea for the Canadiens that Owen Beck could be a realistic option for that. And they just wanted to split it up and see how different guys can do in different situations. They weren't thoroughly impressed with how that combination worked at first, but Owen Beck looked way better than Oliver Kapanen. Despite Kapanen having won the game in the shootout, looked way better at even strength with lesser players like Philip Meshar and Crash and Bang Jared Davidson than Oliver Kapanen did with probably the most talented player in the Canadiens organization playing to his right. So to me, it's extremely important that you're able to bring about multiple layers of value. I feel like Oliver Kapanen was good in his face-off circle. He's good defensively, but he doesn't bring that oomph physically, and he doesn't bring that raw, offensive potential that you would expect of a potential top six center, a guy that can play in that role. So that's where I'm a little privy on that. Where I think it's going to be important, and I think this is all super important, is the health of Kirby Dach. And I think that is something that we're not kind of paying attention to in this situation, because Kirby Dach, same surgeon, in-house surgery with the Montreal Canadiens, done by their head doctor. They no longer send guys out to the U.S. for this stuff. So they did it in-house. Reinbacher was the first. Kirby Dach was the second. We saw how Reinbacher was brought along, where he played 1 game on, 1 game off, 1 game on, 1 game off. Well, look at the Canadian schedule in October. It is heavy.
It's tight.
So I'm under the idea that there's a very strong potential that the player that they have playing on that, that it be a wing or at center on the third line, will get bumped up to the second line if Kirby Dach can't go, or if they want to give him a rest, right? So if that's the case, you would think that a Kapanen, Beck, or Florian Jacki have a leg up already just from positional value over a guy like Joshua Roy, or even a buzzsaw like Vincent's Roar.
Just to back up Marco's point, the Canadiens are going to play 11 times in October. Are you ready for? I'm going to go through these quickly, so pay attention. October 8th, 9th, 11th, 14th, 16, 18, 20, 22, 23, 25, 28. That's the month of October for the Montreal Canadiens. Yeah, Santa Maria. So, I think you bring up a money point about Kirby Dach, which, listen, I just want to speculate for a second, because the Canadiens have an abundance of promising prospects. Not everyone's going to pan out. Not everyone's going to slot into the role that maybe they envision them slotting into one day. Mm-hmm. But I wonder about the pressure on Kirby Dach on him that he put on himself, that maybe his management and his coach have for him. I think out loud, how quickly are the Montreal Canadiens going to act if, I don't want to be negative, but like, you got to plan for stuff. Best case is he hits, you don't got to worry about it. Worst case is he doesn't. And it's more than just turbulent, where the Canadiens have to find an answer. What do you think about how fast Montreal is going to adapt in the worst case scenario after October the 8th and the Canadiens play all of those games in a tight window?
I think the Canadiens would like to see what they have with Dach. They're going to bring him along. They're going to wait for him to be healthy, and they're going to give him a good amount of games that probably coincides with getting to American Thanksgiving and the December roster freeze.
Yeah, I had Christmas in mind too.
Yeah, at that point, it's going to be before Christmas. At that point,
right?
Teams, and I've already been told that this is going to be a thing, and I think I'm starting to see other insiders starting to comment on this. But I started commenting on this in like early August when I got back to Egypt, when I was told there is a significant potential for an active trade market. And I mean this for real. I'm not throwing the earth-shattering trade prediction. All I'm saying is there is a significant amount of potential for moves, more moves than usual. And we already saw it last year because of the 2026 draft and a lot of parity in this league. A lot of teams that decided to not sell this summer to save face with ownership may be forced to look themselves in the mirror and say, this ain't it. We have a serious shot at a generational talent or potential generational talent in Gavin McKenna, and a lot of really good consolation prizes right after him in terms of one of the best defensive crops we've seen since 2008. let's take a shot here, sell off some of our guys, recoup some assets, get younger, like the Nashville Predators did last year, and, reset for next season, because that is the hype that this draft class is getting. And that is going to open up possibilities where you have middling teams, and we've spoken about them: the Pittsburgh Penguins, the New York Islanders, the Boston Bruins, the Seattle Kraken. These are teams that are at crossroads right now. If they're not in a playoff spot by then and they're out of it by 10 points, expect those general managers to be aggressive. And that's where the Montreal Canadiens come in, because I can confirm to you that they've checked in with every single one of those teams about the centers on their lineup.
And do you think teams are going to be, to your point about the 2026 draft, let's say Montreal's like right there and they're doing exceptionally well, but yet, they realize maybe there's a team that they can identify and poach and trade for a better center. Do you think there are 2026 picks on the table?
If they're in a playoff spot and you protect it, why not?
Okay. Well, just first round picks and the draft.
Yeah, but as long as there's protection, right? Like that's normal. You saw the New York Rangers trade for JT Miller, who, in my opinion, with those seasons that he's had, is probably worth an unprotected first. But thank goodness they put protection on it, because then it gave them the opportunity to decide whether to give a 12th overall pick to Pittsburgh, their divisional rival, or a 2026 first round pick. And seeing the volatility in that organization, it could really blow up in their face, despite it being their centennial year, and you want to keep that pick. The fact that the Rangers were willing to give away a 12th overall pick and not give away the potential of a 2026 pick being late if they properly built out their roster goes to show you how high GMs are on this draft versus last draft. So it's going to play on that. There's going to be an element to that, and it's going to cause teams to pick a direction that they were too conservative to pick in the summer because of the parity in this league.
That's interesting to me, because like we've watched 2 preseason games, and we've seen, the first line play on Tuesday in the 4-2 win over Philadelphia. We saw the Demidov appearance in the Monday game against Pittsburgh. Thank goodness Tuesday's game was so much more enjoyable to watch. That was a fun, high tempo preseason game. Listen, it's a preseason game. I don't want to sound like I'm cuckoo bananas. It was just a better game overall from a viewer standpoint, Tuesday versus the Monday. But it's the Toronto Maple Leafs tonight, preseason game number 3. Like, I wonder about, like, when we talk about Vincent Rohr, we talk about Owen Beck, we talk about Oliver Kapanen, we talk about Joshua Roy, Florian Jacki, all these guys that a lot of the Habs fans in this market are excited to see develop and maybe win a job and break camp and start the season in Toronto October the 8th. But any of those names that I talked about, I think there's one, and I think it's Florian. If we're speculating about trades and trading draft picks, and December could be really entertaining to watch the market, you think the Canadiens are looking at any of these guys as air quote untouchables when it comes to teams calling? Oh, you want hypothetical? You want Pavel Zacha? We want Florian Jacki. We want Owen Beck.
So Owen Beck was discussed in the Noah Dobson trade discussions. So I'm sure that if it brought in a top 6 center, he would be of consideration. Obviously not. They wouldn't throw him away, but he would be like a piece that they would want to center a deal around. The same could be said about Joshua Roy. I don't think Florian, simply because of the optics and simply because of the uniqueness of his skill set. I don't think you want to. I'm never going to call a prospect untouchable. I think that like Reinbacher and Hage would be in that category, but I feel like Florian is right there as well because of how unique a prospect he is. So you look at other kinds of guys that could be available. Of course, Aurora could be available, though I think they really, really like him. I think a guy like Adam Engstrom or Jaden Struble could potentially be available in that regard. But again, this is all under the idea that Kirby Dach doesn't live up to the hype.
Exactly.
This is where I say, if Kirby Dach does come back to Forest and is a player that could really work, 2 things can happen. A, he could be included in a trade for a legitimate top 6 center for a team looking to get younger, or he is pushed down to the 3rd line where he would probably belong if he does not crack the top 6 consistently, and you're able to bring in a top 6 center at that point, be it from the various teams that we've brought up. But again, this is if things go wrong. And that is why the Canadiens have given themselves this backup plan. From my sources within the organization, that's the timeline. They're not looking to make a trade right now. You could stop the Mason McTavish stuff. They're not trading him in Anaheim. They're going to take him to December 1st if they have to. The Canadiens are willing to see what they have in front of them right now and then make decisions come late November.
There's no such thing.
As they did last year with Alex Carrier.
You know, I was laughing before when Marco was giving his take, and I had a Sidney Crosby trade proposal go through my mind, but I'm not gonna spit it out. There he goes. Bye. There he goes.
I'll leave this when it comes to Sidney Crosby. Okay.
Go ahead.
There's a lot of people talking about Sidney Crosby. Pittsburgh was in town the other day. I had some good conversations with some Pittsburgh journalists. He's not even there. It hasn't even.
No, the season hasn't started.
No. But like even as a logistic thing, it hasn't even crossed his mind. Like he wants to stay in Pittsburgh. Everyone talking about it and pushing
until he doesn't.
Exactly, is going to drive him to that point, but it's going to be a flip of the switch thing, not something that he's going to have thought of for a very, very long time. A lot like Brad Marchand and the Boston Bruins.
It makes all the sense in the world.
That's all I'm leaving it there. If fans are waiting for Crosby to be the savior of this rebuild, then I just don't feel like Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon then did a good enough job.
Savior of the rebuild. The rebuild's over, brother. Rebuild's done. Now they're just adding.
Okay. They're adding one of the most important pieces that you can have on a contender.
Yeah, I mean, if he's available, I stand by my take.
Top 4 right shot D, top 6 center. Those are the two like that. If you have those two locked down, then you're in business.
And you watch Jacob Fowler, cool as a cucumber on Monday. Like you're starting to check a lot of boxes, Mr. Marco D'Amico. Marco D'Amico always checks a lot of boxes on this podcast. You can follow him at MN D'Amico. Read all the latest through rg.org. Certainly with extensive coverage around the Montreal Canadiens. And don't forget, D'Amico joining McKenna and Starr every Wednesday at 8:05 for Habs Breakfast. Enjoy the Habs and Leafs tonight. And make sure to check back with us for our Friday live show as we recap game number 3 of the preseason. Thanks to our sponsor at Little Bear, littlebearonline.com. Everything for your perhaps favorite member of the family. I don't want to judge. I don't want to put that on you, but they are members of the family, cherished members. And Chuck and his wonderful staff at Little Bear, littlebearonline.com care about your pet as much as you do. You can support us by supporting our sponsors. Little Bear has curbside pickup. They have delivery. And, of course, you can go to their store on St. Catherine and Westmount right across from Alexis Neon. Marco D'Amico, thanks as always, and we'll see you live on Friday after the Habs and Leafs.